Call to order. EBR Parish Thursday, January 30, 2025 special meeting. We have our opening invocation and pledge. The invocation will be led by School Board Member Mark Ballou, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by School Board Member Patrick Martin. Please stand.
Lord, thank you for bringing us together in service of our community. We pray that you guide us always, help strengthen us to make tough decisions, and continue guiding us so that the meeting can be productive and allow us to be effective and decisive. We ask these in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Okay, call to order and roll call. Can we have a roll call?
Just a reminder, everyone please log into the special meeting. District 4, President Stewart.
Present.
District 7, Vice President Gode.
Here.
District 1, Mr. Blue.
Here.
District 2, Mr. Lannis.
Present.
District 3, Ms. Powell Lewis.
Present.
District 5, Mr. Lewis.
Present.
District 6, Mr. Russ.
Present.
District 8, Ms. Sule.
Present.
District 9, Mr. Martin.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, looking at B, items for consideration, we have the 2024-25 amended school year calendar. Consideration of a request to amend 2024 school year calendar. Are there any comments from the board? I'm sorry, public. Oh. Ms. Matthews?
Hello. We need 3,983 minutes per semester, which equals 41 classes. We have 43.5 B days, so we actually don't need to make up any B days. If by putting them at the end of the semester, that gives us no true instructional time. Yes, it meets the requirements of the state. It's great. But what's going to happen is we will give them their final exam, then we will put on movies. Personally, in my classroom, it'll be Selena. Okay, that's what we will watch in my class while I grade their exams. No instructional time. However, if we do it the way it needs to be done, because teachers are behind in actual teaching and the kids are behind in actual learning, what we could do is change the 19th to the full day, which is what is recommended, then take Ash Wednesday from Mardi Gras break, make that an A day. Yes, that absolutely does put 2 A days back to back, which I guess maybe if you don't like your A day classes might get a little frustrating, but it is what it is. And then that would give us 42 total A days, and all you need is 41.06 days total, and we will meet our requirements, and that is what I would feel would be best. Now, this is not a hill that I'm going to die on, because if we end up doing what is proposed, it will meet the state's requirements, but the kids won't have any actual learning made up. They'll watch movies at the end of the year, and nobody will come on the 23rd because that's the day kids weren't supposed to come, but a lot of teachers probably won't come on the 5th either because that's Ash Wednesday. Have a great day.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Mr. Martin?
Thank you very much. I have previously expressed my concern at making up missed days with days that won't actually improve student learning. And I agree with Ms. Matthews that adding 3 half days after exams is not going to add any student learning or make up for any actual learning that is missed. If that's what we have to do to comply with the law, and that's the only way to do it, that's one thing. But I haven't seen all the calculations to be sure that we absolutely do have to make up all of those full missed minutes. So it seems to me we're inconveniencing a lot of parents and students to, as Ms. Matthews said, go watch a movie after they've already had their final exams and their grades and outcomes have been determined already. So, I understand, Superintendent, that the February 19th, I would assume that we've added this without going through the CAL because February 19th is almost upon us. So I wonder, Superintendent, might it be acceptable if we amended the calendar to make the 19th a full day of school, and then ask you to come back to us at the February CAL with either this plan or more data, so that we could more fully evaluate whether we really do need to make up instructional time that was lost, so our students will stay on track.
As always, Mr. Martin, I serve at the pleasure of the board. We do need to extend the 19th, so yes, I definitely want to do that this evening. But Deputy Smith wants to make a few comments relative to the calendar. He led the conversation around the days.
I concur with the comments from Superintendent Cole. However, we do need to make up instructional minutes for our cognitive unit courses. As you realize that the calendar is broken up for non-cognitive unit courses, that districts are required to have a calendar built for 63,700 instructional minutes, and that's across for both semesters. But however, at the high school and those middle school classes that offer cognitive units, each day stands alone. And so essentially we have 45 A days, 43 B days, in which some of those days are half days, with a block of 94 minutes. And you and I both agreed that we had conversations about the high school block. At one point last year was 97 minutes. I've gotten questions of, well, why don't we just add a few extra minutes? Well, that doesn't capture any instructional minutes. And so our charge from the superintendent was to try to be at least disruptive with families. We know that Ash Wednesday, that's one of the holidays after Mardi Gras that most of our families, they want it when we go through committee. The only other option you have is Easter and spring break. And so the charge from the superintendent was to try to be least disruptive from our families. And so we do have some half days at the end of the year, which we just extended to, and it's more like you said, compliance. But I was a parent of East Baton Rouge Parish School System. I taught in East Baton Rouge Parish School System, and I taught all year. So there was no days that was essentially fun days, when it got towards the end of the year. So, and I'm sure that all of our teachers, every day that teach students are in front of them, is an instructional day, full instructional day. So, but we most certainly can come back for the CAL, but essentially, if we want to be least disruptive, I can assure you we do need the minutes for our cognitive unit courses.
No,
If we can extend the days past Memorial Day, the year,
I'm certainly not advocating that, Mr. Smith. Look, at the end of the day, obviously I'm going to defer to the superintendent and the staff, all of the experts, not us. However, my personal opinion is that, and my own recollection from my own days as a student, is that, at that time of year, adding a half day, making a half day, which nobody was planning to do much anyway because exams were over, is not going to make up for the instructional time that we actually lost. So we're either students are going to miss 4 days of education, or the teachers are going to have to condense, everything and add that in.
And I'll add, when the curriculum team, when they map out the sequence and scope or the pacing guide, there's always enough times within those units where they build time into the curriculum where they have the time to teach instruction. And so.
All right. I generally, and I'll express this in another item in a minute as well, generally have consistently expressed my strong preference and belief that except in true urgent situations like the charter vote that we have tonight, that things go through the committee before coming here. I understand with February 19th, I understand that. I'm not going to object to the item, but that's my concern.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you very much, Superintendent.
Appreciate it.
Ms. Paul?
Thank you. I have a few questions, and I'm just going to ask them all at the same time, and if you all will just answer accordingly. One of the questions that I have is in regards to what are our neighboring districts doing in regards to the academic calendar. And then also, just as Mr. Martin mentioned, of course, we follow the lead of those who are the experts in this situation, which would be our district leadership. And so the question would be, what would be the compliance measures for both teachers and our students for the additional time or the additional time at the end of the school year when we turn those half days into full days? We know that schools can be required to offer certain levels of academic program or instruction at that time. Also, what would be the attendance requirements? And then lastly is just simply the comment of, we've just recently started this Ash Wednesday day off. I mean, for probably all of us sitting on this dais, we went to school on Ash Wednesday. So this is returning to something that we're familiar with. But my questions are, once again, in regards to what are other districts doing, compliance measures, and then attendance requirements.
I can kind of answer the first question. I don't know if Superintendent Cole has any further information. We've probably all seen the news thread with Livingston Parish is currently adjusting their calendar. I can't speak to any other parishes, but I just received a text from one of our Type 1 charters. They're asking, are we amending our calendar? And I told them that it's on the agenda tonight. As it relates to accountability measures as far as with pretty much essentially the teachers were working 91 days this semester. There's no change in their work schedule. We're not asking them to actually make up those days that they were out. The superintendent's not asking those days to be made up. Essentially, you're adding one additional half day to the student schedule, which is the last day. They would end on the last day that the teachers end. What were the other questions? I know there was.
Well, then first I want to ask this though. So what will be the lesson plan requirement, or will there be a lesson plan requirement as, for that time after testing, or if it's a half day, what could that possibly look like for a school in the case that we're turning their half days into full days?
Well, schools, to answer your question, yes, every day is a lesson plan day, and we expect every day to be an instructional day. While we recognize the reality of some of those days, we do expect for every day to be an instructional day. That's number one. A bigger reality is we recognize and understand as we work through standards, we work towards children being able to be successful on LEAP 2025, and a lot of our instruction is geared towards that. We also recognize that after LEAP 2025 has been administered, teachers begin preparing students for content they perhaps are going to see in the next school year. And that is the expectation. And so even on those half days after exams have been administered, well, even before exams are administered, we're hoping our school leaders will create schedules that allow for thematic units to be processed or to be done at the end of the school year, for teachers to do creative things in an effort to prepare for the next semester or the next school year in terms of what students might see, and then work their schedules to administer those exams in a way that doesn't become disruptive. Now, as it relates to Ash Wednesday, I too went to school on Ash Wednesday, but we've transitioned to allowing our families who acknowledge that day for religious purposes to have that day off. And we know so many of our families are Catholic, and we know so many of our families use that day as part of their religious beliefs and part of their religious rituals. So while we hadn't always done it, we started, and I've heard from so many people that if at all possible, let's try to keep that day. We also recognize in our conversation that a lot of people don't want us to disrupt spring break. But in addition to that, when the team developed the calendar, we put in contingency days as well as contingency minutes that would give teachers an opportunity to flexibly plan what they were doing in terms of their instruction. So we recognize that adding the minutes at the end of the year is more compliance than anything else, in an effort to be in compliance. However, we feel very confident about the amount of time our teachers have to continue quality instruction in an effort to prepare our students, and so this is the recommendation. But again, we will seek to have February 19 approved tonight. And then if you all want us to come back with another plan, we can do that. I will mention that in that plan, we're going to do one of three things. We're going to either add minutes to the day, we're either going to take some vacation days away, and I think, or we're either going to come back and recommend, after having spoken to teachers and families, that we continue to add the minutes to the end of the day at the end of the school year. But whatever the board is requesting of us, we will do. I just know for the February 19th day, we need to want to extend. You asked about other districts around. The districts connecting to us are doing different things based on the way they develop their calendars. And so every district does something different with their calendar in terms of days off, amount of times, class, lessons, hours, minutes, and how they use the calendar for Carnegie units. 7-period days, block scheduling. Every district is doing something a little bit different in terms of what they're going to do. But what I will tell you, a lot of our neighboring districts are waiting to see what we do. And from there, we have been expressing to them, we're going to take a vote tonight, and then we will let them know what we're going to do. So if we approve tonight, we'll let them know what we're doing. If not, we'll say we were approved for the 19th, and then we're going to come back and work to bring a different plan.
Thank you.
All right.
I can tell you, Ms. Paulo, is that Ash Wednesday has pretty much been built into the calendar for almost 10 years now.
Thank you.
Mr. Russ?
Thank you. I certainly appreciate the complexity of our academic calendar. I don't think there's like a perfect way to make up for 4 missed school days, unfortunately, but I think that the recommendation made by the superintendent is probably, as he stated, the least disruptive to families. So based on that, I'd like to move that we accept the recommendation made by the superintendent. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Russ. Mr. Godey?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Smith, on the May 22nd and May 23rd, what were originally scheduled for those days? A half day for the 22nd and nothing on the 23rd for the students?
Yeah, originally the 23rd was the last day for teachers, and what we're asking to capture minutes is to have kids come on the 23rd for a half day. So originally students' last day was, I believe, the 22nd. I can't see.
So if we, I guess I'm struggling with this concept of these are things taken after tests, and I assume we're talking final exams. So if we're adding 2 days for the students toward the end of the year, why couldn't final exams be pushed back 2 days? And the final exams just be given 2 days later, so these days wouldn't come after the last 2 days.
That's certainly possible.
That's the expectation.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't understand the discussion of this is going to be stuff after the final exams, because you got 2 days, they can be A and B days or whatever, so exams are just 2 days later than they would be before.
Yes, sir.
So you get 2 full days of education time.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Am I missing something?
They end up making it a makeup day.
It's not a makeup day. The exams are going to be 2 days later. So you have your instructional time running 2 days longer than you thought you had. I just am not following the conversation here. So I support the superintendent on his recommendation. Thank you.
Mr. Lanus?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I was going to say, Mike, honestly, you took the thoughts right out of my mind. It's like, it's a around the world conversation. And I think you heard it already before. There's no true way to make this the perfect schedule, but this is the most compliant that we can, the most compliant schedule we can put forth that makes sense in terms of the law. And then also what we're doing in terms of our families. So I just want to say, it goes without saying, I appreciate it for putting the schedule together, and I 100% agree with it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank Deputy Smith and Ms. Levantino for leading the work with the team to come up with the extension of the minutes. And so I appreciate the hard work of staff.
Thank you. Are there any more board comments? Madam Secretary, can we call for a vote?
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. B2 is the Subscription Alliance Technology Group. It's consideration of a request to accept a subscription with Alliance Technology Group and to authorize the superintendent and general counsel to negotiate and enter a contract to provide 4 metal detectors in an amount not to exceed $334,000, $708.44 over a 4-year period. Any board comments? I'm sorry, public, I always come to the board. Ms. Thorne Matthews?
Metal detectors are extremely important for the schools, especially the ones that are in need of the multiple ones. However, I definitely question spending the money getting the additional ones when we have several sitting at schools that are not being used. And the only answer I've gotten when I've begged, can we take some of these from the schools that are not being used? And I was told, no, we can't take it from this school. And I'm not going to name the school, but we can't take it from this school because if a kid gets shot at that school, and we know that we took it over here to this school where it's broken, and it comes out that we moved it from there, that's bad press. So we have them not being used where it could have been moved where it's needed. But we can't do that because that would be bad press if a gun shows up at that school. So let's go ahead and spend $334,708.44 because it would be bad press if a gun shows up at a school where we have perfectly good metal detectors not being used at all, sitting there collecting dust, not plugged in, not doing a darn thing. How about let's use the ones we have, because they need to be used. How many guns we found on campuses this week? Just this week, how many we found? Anybody want to answer that out loud?
Any other public comments? There's an online comment.
This is from an L. Williams. Metal detectors are not being used effectively at a local school. While students go through metal detectors in the morning, those who arrive after school starts are not subject to bag searches or metal detector screenings. Additionally, metal detectors are not utilized during game days or after-school events, creating a significant safety concern. Following any safety incident, the school should be transparent with the public about how a weapon was able to bypass security. A detailed report of the situation should be made publicly available. In September 2024, it was announced the district was working on a new comprehensive security plan. What is the current status of that plan? And that is the last public comment I have.
Thank you. Now we have board comments, and we have Mr. Lanus.
Thank you, Madam President. On this particular issue, I must be very vocal, and it's for several reasons. One, I think I voiced this before. It's not that the metal detectors are not working. It's the process by which we're using metal detectors, and I think we heard some of this, some of the comments already. One of which is when kids walk through those doors in the morning, metal detectors are being used. Once school starts, metal detectors are unplugged, and I saw this myself at several schools. Metal detectors are unplugged and they're no longer used. Another issue that we have is that we have too many campuses that have open access. What does that mean? That means that a lot of our community-based schools allow community people that can come on those campuses, even while school is going on, to walk a track or to walk on the campus. When this takes place, I want you to put your mind and put yourselves in the mind of a student. Let's say somebody has a beef taking place at a school. They come on school, they go put a gun by a tree. There's no one there that can see where that gun is. That kid come to school the next day, they walk through the metal detectors, it doesn't go off. They go right back to the place where they placed the weapon, and they can bring that gun on a school campus. Or let's say a student that gets to school late, that drives to school. That gun is inside of that school, inside of the student's car. The student walks through the metal detectors undetected. The metal detectors are unplugged. The student, after they are unplugged, the student goes back to their car, said car, and gets the weapon. It's the processes that which we're using, and we have to change those processes. I'm not against metal detectors at all, but we have to use them in an effective way that's going to keep our entire campus, employees, and our students safe. I said that time and time again. I'll stand on the dais saying that because these occurrences are happening far too often, and I'm not saying that we're not doing enough in terms of safety. I'm just saying the processes have to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landis. Ms. Lewis?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. That leads to my question. My question is in regards to compliance measures for the schools that already have metal detectors. What is the plan or what is the process as far as are these metal detectors, you know, as Mr. Landis mentioned, are they unplugged after the entry or the beginning of the school day? Or are students required, or anybody who enters the campus required to go through those metal detectors? Within the last 2 years or so, I've had opportunities to visit both Geo Prep as well as EBR Readiness High School, who has the metal detectors and have a security checkpoint as you enter into the school. And so that exists all day long. And my question is whether or not we have those same requirements for our other schools as well. So, Mr. Cole, I guess.
You want me to respond or wait for Mr. Goddard?
You can respond.
Well, first and foremost, I appreciate the questions and appreciate the conversation. We have shifted to a new culture in our society here in South Louisiana where we have to be more aggressive in how we utilize our safety systems. First, let me say, the expectation is that metal detectors are to be used at every school for anyone who enters the facility. We also recognize that's not happening. As recent as today, myself, Mr. McCann, Mr. Smith, Mr. Gilbert, Ms. Cheney, and Captain Walker, we are visiting schools to observe the processes and the procedures with an expectation that everyone is walking through metal detectors, every bag is being checked at schools. And I'll be very transparent and honest. Some of our schools have a better system, some do not. Some of our schools lack as a result of human capital, which is why I asked our eye care department, our CWA, to deploy human capital to schools where we recognize there are a need for additional human capital resources. Earlier this morning, we met with a security team to discuss what it would look like to have outside additional security to come in and man our doors at all times to ensure that every single visitor who enters on our campus walks through a metal detector or at a minimum is scanned and checked to make sure that there are no weapons coming on the campus. We have to think about making a different level of investment in terms of how we keep our kids safe. I recognize this is a shift not only for our school system but for our community. So let me apologize first to those families who feel as if though our schools aren't doing what they're supposed to. I can assure you we're on campuses setting the expectation, and in those security plans, they are telling us they're doing it. Not like a child who tells you he brushes his teeth every morning. Oftentimes, they tell you they're doing it and they're not. And I take it extremely serious, which is why we made changes in terms of some of the administrative staff at some of our schools. And we've had one-on-one conversations with principals to let them know this is the expectation, and we are deploying folks from central office to come and check, to see, to observe, but most importantly, to help where there is assistance. Captain Walker and Ms. Cheney are consistently reporting back to me what they are observing when they go into our schools. And here's what we're seeing. Again, some schools have better systems based on their campuses. Some schools do not. I've asked Mr. Gilbert to visit every campus, and he's begun this work already, and give me a comprehensive security check, and then tell me what resources do we need to deploy based on what he sees, based on our conversations with some security experts, and then also what the families and the principals are telling us. Some of our elementary schools want higher fences. Some of our high schools want doors that, better doors that lock when kids or people leave the door and they can't return inside. But most of what we're hearing from our high schools and our middle schools is they need human capital support. We need more people to man doors throughout the course of the day, because most of who is on campus are required to participate in the instructional processes. So we're going through the evaluation. We're going through every school, starting with our high schools and some of our most challenging areas. And then when we talk about, you know, the number of weapons that have been found this school year, I have no problem. I gave that information to the media, and I don't mind sharing it with you all publicly. We have 5 weapons, guns that have been found on our school campuses this year. We have 5, a total of 5 that have been found on our school campuses brought to the school by students. We have 5 weapons that have been found on our campuses after school, in the parking lots after school. And then we have 1 that was a BB gun. So we have 11 total weapons as of today that were found. One of the members of our community mentioned the 2 weapons that were found this week. It is to the credit has to be given to the staff and the security team for recognizing that there were 2 students, former students, they're not students now, who were on our campuses. They were identified, they were approached, they were escorted to their vehicle, and then when they got to their vehicle, they weren't just asked to leave, the vehicle was checked, and there were 2 more weapons found in the vehicle in the parking lot on the campus. So I want the public to know our security teams and our staffs are working extremely hard. The weapons that were found were as a result of a tip from the community. Folks are calling, letting us know what is going on. And then we did have a lapse in our system where 1 got by. We did have a lapse. We have to own it. We have to acknowledge it. We can't make any excuses, and we have to work to get better. And we are at that school where the weapon was found. We're working to get better. We're meeting with families, and we're going to deploy more resources. In the morning, there will be teams from central office who have been told you are to be at those schools every day at 6:30 in the morning until further notice. So teams from central office staff, we're not asking staff at the schools to do this, we're asking staff from the central office to go to those schools, be there on those campuses, and to provide support wherever they need it until the principals say they no longer need them. And the primary focus is to make sure every child is effectively and efficiently checked as they enter school in the morning, and then throughout the course of the day, we send everybody to 1 entry point when they are going on our school campus. That's the expectation, that has been the directive, and we have teams that are going to go out and let us know and report back. And I can assure you, and I want school leaders to hear this, if we find out that you are not adhering to the expectation, we'll have a conversation, and then we're going to start thinking about how do we do something different, because priority number 1 is going to be keep all of our students safe. That's priority number 1. And then after that, we're going to work on making sure they're educated in a high-quality environment with good teachers who care and are doing a good job. So we do have some challenges. We are working through them, but I can assure you it is high on my list of things to do, and many of our staff are in schools seeking, working, evaluating, and reporting back. And I want to be clear, while we're working with law enforcement, this is new to our community. Yes. We've not had to have walk-through metal detectors in the way that we need them now. And there are going to be various different conversations about what it looks like. If we get too militarized in terms of having too much law enforcement in the school, folks will say we look like we are supporting the school to prison pipeline. But if we don't have enough security measures, if we don't work with Rhino to make sure our doors lock in the event of a catastrophe, if we don't work with security teams to make sure we have the proper folks at the door, folks will say we don't care about the welfare of our students. I would say as a board and as superintendent, we got to decide how aggressive we want to be in terms of keeping our kids safe, make the investment in human capital and the resources, and do our part. But we are working, we are evaluating, we are seeking, and we are trying to hold people accountable to do it every single day. And where there are areas where we have the detectors and we're not using them, we're having those conversations with our school leaders to understand why.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Cole. And if I can complete my statement, Madam President, I just want to share that everyone deserves to be safe, and I thank you for your transparency, and I thank you for the support of you and your team. As I continue to beat the same drum, my drum is the fact that when we go into a governmental building, including this one, or we go into an airport, we have to make sure that we come stripped down or be prepared to strip for the sake of protecting adults. But then when it comes to our students, our most prized possessions who are defenseless in most cases, it is important that we still have to go through at least some level of that measure to keep our kids safe. We don't want tragedies to come knocking at our doors that we have seen all over this country. And so that is something that we want to keep in mind, and we will also support the work that you all are doing as well. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Mr. Gode?
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Cole, for your comments, because I know and I think I can safely assume that every one of the board members up here puts the safety of the students and the safety of the staff and faculty utmost in that. I do know, however, that we have many schools that are open campuses, and those are not going to be solved overnight. Fortunately, I think most of them are in the elementary school type, but, you know, we just had a press conference with the governor of Louisiana at one of our elementary schools, and that campus is wide open. There's nothing you can do about it. A campus that I go walk my dog by almost every day is wide open. You know, there's nothing we can do about that in the short term. So this is not a short-term problem. It's a long-term problem, and it is a cultural shift from where we were when we were building schools to be open and inviting to the community, to trying to make them open and inviting atmosphere, but secure. And that's a difficult thing to do, particularly to retrofit. I do have one other comment, though. I guess I take it personally, and personally for the staff, for someone to stand here and say that things were not being done right because they're afraid the school system would look bad. I think that is very detrimental and degrading to the folks. And the public that made that comment, my expectation was that the superintendent would know who is the person that said that by the end of this meeting or tomorrow morning at the latest, because that person needs to have a conversation with our superintendent about what is actually what's going on with our district. And I expect that to happen. If it doesn't happen, then there's going to be a big credibility gap that is made. So I expect the superintendent to know who that person is. So the other side of that conversation, because I'm just tired of getting someone said, someone this, someone that, someone this. If you can't stand up and say who it is, then I'm not going to listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gode. Mr. Martin?
Thank you. Superintendent, am I correct in assuming that you've identified in your review of the entire system and process that we have a very urgent need for 4 metal detectors? Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, and so this is to fill a very specific gap that you've identified that's very urgent.
Absolutely. Advanced metal detectors with new technology that it's going to help expedite our children and our staff being evaluated effectively in terms of having weapons on their person, or in their bag. So it's advanced technology that we have spoken to some experts and learned is the best in the country.
So, I'll support the motion. Has a motion been made yet, Madam President?
No.
Okay, I'll make an appropriate motion when I'm done. But I have to express my concern that we have many times in the 2 years I've been on the board had a security incident, and we've tried to have a knee-jerk reaction to it that always involves spending money, when, as you point out, a lot of our challenges don't involve the need to spend money to buy things, but to use the resources we have more effectively. More importantly, sometimes that leads us to make kind of procurement decisions more expeditiously than is necessary to make sure we've got the right system in place. I'll support this, but I want to reiterate my general opposition to having items come up outside of the normal process. But understanding the importance of security, I will certainly support this. Those are my primary concerns. With that said, Madam President, I move to accept the recommendation of the superintendent.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Are you done, Mr. Martin? Oh, okay. I'm next. I just basically wanted to ask the superintendent, has any locations, or are these metal detectors already assigned for a location, or have you been,
Yeah, so I just wanted to see if you want to speak on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say we began these conversations early last semester around looking at what resources we had and then upgrading this technology. And in my conversations with Captain Walker and Ms. Cheney, we went back and forth for a period of time discussing what upgrades do we make in terms of what we already have. So our conversation around Evolve started last semester, long before we had an incident this semester, and we started having that conversation. But in the conversation, we didn't want to just go out and wholesale purchase for every school without understanding whether or not the technology works the way we were told it does. And so we had representatives come in and do demonstrations. Captain Walker and Ms. Cheney have done a great deal of research. It just so happened that we were planning to bring this item in February, and then we had an incident and said, why don't we go ahead and seek to deploy these resources sooner rather than later? So that's going to be at Scotlandville High School, Bel Air High School, Woodlawn High School, and McKinley High School. And we chose those high schools as a result of evaluating all of our schools and thinking about what we're hearing from families, what we're learning from the school leadership, and determining where to best deploy those resources. And I do want to make mention of this. Estruma High School has perhaps the best system there is in terms of how they are getting their kids through the system quickly and getting them out, and then making sure everyone who comes on campus has to enter into an area where they walk through a metal detector. So kudos to the leadership and the team at Estruma High School, which is why they want one of the schools selected. Strictly based on their systems and the population, but the 4 schools I mentioned are the largest high schools we have in our parish, and we wanted to make sure we deployed those resources there first, see how that works, and then come back to the board later with a request to do more by way of resources and then by way of human capital as well.
Thank you. I just wanted to let the community know, and because I was aware of some of that information, that we are being proactive with the measurements and trying to secure our campuses and trying to make sure that the students are safe. So I commend you and I thank you guys for trying to take the initiative to do that and not wait. And so I just wanted to let the community know that we are putting things in place to try to be a better and safe community. Mr. Mark Ballou.
Thank you, Madam President. You touched on the fact that these 4 detectors are advanced technology, and we use the term metal, but they're not actually metal detectors, they're weapons detectors. But in terms of the deficiencies that Mr. Lannis was talking about, as far as the need for continuous use during the day and having enough people to utilize it. What type of training, and is this new technology easier for staff to use and be trained in? Will it make up for some of these problems we're having with ease of use and personnel?
Well, we've been told that it will, but Mr. Ballou, we have some representatives here from the company who can speak to your question if you like.
Sure. No, I mean, I'd like to know a little bit more about it.
Good evening. Better? Okay. Good evening. I'm Brooks Gerhardt. I work for an Alliance Technology Group, and then we're here with our partners at Evolve. And Michael, do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Michael Groh. I'm going to have to stand on the My name is Michael Groh. I'm a manufacturer rep for Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Alabama. I live in Thibodaux, and Brooks is one of our vendors. We started this process a while back. I came to a community meeting a little over a year and a half ago. We did a demo. They're our largest integrator with colleges, with K-12 in the country, and he'll talk a little bit about it. Lafourche came out and they did the same thing. They bought 6 at the start, then bought 4, and then ended up with 19, this year. So it's been a process, and you guys are very smart. We're one layer, and I commend you for having people that are really good adopters. And I'll let Brooks talk about the differences of ours as well than a metal detector you just walk through. It's totally different. And I think after he talks about these things and maybe shares a few slides, you'll understand more, because that is more like a TSA feel. It's very frustrating on faculty and staff. our system is ease of flow, can move a lot of people in because they need breakfast, they need to get to extra learning early in the morning, and it's very, very efficient and very easy to train on.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, so I'll go through this quick. You guys can stop me, ask as many questions as you want, but I don't want to take up too much time. I think one important thing, just sitting here listening to the conversation, is kind of the difference in, a lot of people have mentioned, what a culture change it is, right? And what comes with that is everyone knows what a metal detector is. Everyone knows what X-ray is. Everyone's used to that. And so when you talk about weapons detection or metal detection, oftentimes early on in the conversation, they can become synonymous. And there's a major difference, right? And so part of the conversations with the district over the past several months is how do we try something to see, can this be more efficient? And again, I think a really important point that you guys brought up is, does this help us not only be more efficient and get people in on time, but how do we reduce that human error, right? And so a key part of this is reducing that human error, finding that balance to get people to class on time, and increasing with the educational process. So I'll be quick. This is an example of what a dual lane system looks like. You guys are going to have single lanes. Just by way of reference, we see a single lane, processing, up to 2,000 people an hour, depending on what the environment is. You all know what the process is coming through this. I personally did it with my backpack, and I think it took, over a minute, right, for me alone. So I'm going to just move to make the point that this is, while it's newer technology, that's a very broad term. Metal detection is very old, right? This technology has been around since 2013. And, we're fortunate that we've done this for several years now, and we've learned what works well and what doesn't, right? And the reason I just have this up here is because I don't want you guys to think that this is a new concept to education, right? I've personally been involved with almost 1,000 deployments. So we know, again, what works, and to the question of training, because that was the direct question, our team actually will come out, we'll be on the ground with you guys, we'll install everything. We'll do all training by site, so we're not going to just show up to the district office and say, here you go, and now go train everyone else. We're going to go by school, make sure they're comfortable with it, and then we'll be on the ground for initial operations. So when they use it for that first day, we're going to be there with them saying, hey, here's some tweaks that we can make, and make sure you guys are successful, right? Because we understand that this is a 4-system pilot, essentially, right? Let's start small and go from there. I'll quickly show just one of the key differences here for people that haven't seen this. Some of you guys that travel, go to sporting events, amusement parks, things like that, there's a very high chance you've walked through this. So the primary difference, right, is with a metal detector, traditional metal detector. I don't know if we can go back. Right, it's just a red light, green light. And that's what introduces a lot of the human error. I set it off, and then the guessing game begins. I mean, my backpack here has 10 pockets in it, right? If you're going to sit there and go through all of it, you're going to get fatigued. You're going to miss things. It's a very common thing, right? Classic example, stick a small pistol behind a big belt buckle, walk through the metal detector, set it off, have them wand you, and they're going to say, have a good day, right? So the key difference is we're filtering between, what benign items look like and what characteristics of specifically, primarily firearms and other weapons look like. So we're looking for that metallic characteristic. So while, yes, we're, in general looking at metal, it has more to do with the shape, size, and density of it, right? And so that's how we're able to filter benign items and maintain a level of filtration where, as you saw in these videos, hopefully people walk straight through and no alarm happens, even if they, have everything that I have on me right now, right? Phone, wallet, keys, belt. And then we take that a step further, and you'll see here, we're going to show exactly where that potential threat is, right? So if there's multiple alerts, we'll show multiple boxes. And again, this will only show if someone has something that potentially could be a threat. They'd be asked to step off to the side. The other major difference is everyone else continues through, right? So a lot of people talk about finding that balance in weapons detection. An important note that's often overlooked in what you see on the news when you read District XYZ put in metal detectors is they have hundreds of kids outside waiting to come in, right? Well, that's not feasible either. To Michael's point, they need to get breakfast. There's a big soft target with hundreds of people outside. And to your point earlier, one of the big advantages here is this tablet can be monitored from the main office. So if you are late, right, and you go back to a resource standpoint, well, we don't have to have someone standing out there at all times, right? We can see on the camera that they come through the door, they walk through, they're cleared. If they're not, the front office staff, security, et cetera, can be called. So that can help from the resource standpoint, and also, we encourage to run this at all times, go down to that single point of entry, and this is actually feasible to run all day, right? Obviously, and we can, go down different paths, but Michael hit the nail on the head. There isn't a silver bullet, right? This is a big onion, you gotta peel it back and start somewhere. But if we can put a good baseline in place where whether you're on time, you're late, you're a visitor, you're gonna get screened, and set that mentality, while also allowing people to, get through to class on time, that's a starting point, right? That doesn't mean that we don't need adults outside looking to see if someone's dropping something out of a tree. But at the end of the day, right, we want to make sure, it's not specific to your all's district, but incidents around the country, we continuously read, the weapon was continuously carried with the student. They didn't have any intention to do anything wrong. A fight breaks out, they get in an argument, and because they have the weapon, they use it. Right, and so you read about a lot of these, mass shootings, which are horrible, but there's a lot more going on in the community that's often not reported on, and so having that level of security that's in place 24/7, 100% of the time, right? Evolve allows you to do that, right? And it's much more feasible to do that than a traditional way. So,
one thing I wanted to mention too, and you'll lead into it on this slide. We're looking for weapons of mass casualty. Pipe bombs, IEDs, things like that. It's not just weapons. It does not see race, creed, color. If somebody alerts because of a benign item, you go through their bag and you may see, like I did a deployment, and a kid has prescription medicine in his name. It's supposed to be with the office. Son, you need to bring that over there. You have a timestamp picture of why they alerted. So when I go as a parent and say, you're picking on my son, you caught him smoking outside, whatever, and now all of a sudden he gets caught with medicine. No, he got caught because he had an item that alerts that he knows he's not supposed to bring.
And we can show you exactly where it is, right? And to Michael's point, we track all of this, right? We know how many weapons are being found, what types of weapons, what our alarm rates look like, how many students. So you end up with all of this data that, to the superintendent's point, it's a big task to redo and improve security across the district. Well, having data like this really helps with that. Like, where do we need the staff, right? Why does this entrance have 500 more students than this entrance when I've been told it's only 200 per entrance, right? Why does this school have this many students coming late, right? And so this gives the district a dashboard to really dive into the individual regions and schools to say, we've got an issue going on in this community. Maybe we need to surge resources here, right? So I just wanted to point that out because this is something that's unique, again, to Evolve, and having that insight, frankly, for all of you guys on the board as well as the district staff.
The AI component of it too, it's not only as good as it comes out of the box. As new weapons come out, little air weight, 38s, we're only hitting on that little bitty barrel. So as new weapons come out, we push updates down and things like that. As a board member, and what superintendents really enjoy is, we realize it's a significant investment, but it's so much more than metal detector. We're in that category, but it's a weapon screening device. And as a school board member, you can have on your desk every 2 weeks. The 4 schools, you would know exactly what the ingress is, the time of arrivals, and things like that. So you're going to know how many people are coming in, what items are tagged, what are we finding, and things like that. So you have a lot of insights that are available to you.
I just wanted to add, we've been researching this company for over a year now. This didn't just start right now. I actually went out to Baltimore and observed it in use at one of the urban schools located with over 1,300 students. Saw the process, saw some of the things that some of the barriers we're gonna end up coming in contact with at the start of it, but what I saw was a good product that would support and strengthen our safety and security at these schools with weapons being detected. I just want to add that. And law enforcement that's currently working in the school, they actually came out and assessed the product when we had it here to see if they recommend it. And the ones that's law enforcement at the schools recommend this product in our schools.
Thanks, Ms. Cheney. The last thing I would say, just to wrap this up, is we know that this works, right? And it's successful. So I can't emphasize enough, not to feel that you guys are on your own doing this. We take the lessons from all the districts that we've done this in and pass that on. And it's, while this may be a trial and a pilot period for you all with the initial 4, right, we're confident that this will be successful. And we continue to see in our districts that have had this deployed for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, dramatic reductions in overall weapons on campuses that frankly is public knowledge, right? And I'll just give you an example. DeKalb County released, DeKalb County's in Georgia, right, large metro Atlanta district. In 1 year of operation, they actually went to expand their operation outside of just the high schools and middle schools to include some others. They found a reduction of from going from 26 firearms to 4 in 1 year, right? And again, part of the unspoken advantage of Evolve is, you know, counter to what a lot of people may think, we don't want to find the weapons. We want to have a system in place that acts as a permanent deterrent, right? And because of how the technology works, while allowing people to get to class on time, allowing operators that frankly may not necessarily be security minded, right? Teachers, admins, et cetera, to give them a piece of technology and platform that they can efficiently operate and find weapons, right? That's what leads to that permanent deterrent, right? And Evolve is something that's proven to be able to do that. So with that, sorry, we probably went on a little longer than necessary. I just wanted to make sure we covered it, so.
It's good, it's good. This is a
No.
worthwhile conversation.
No, we appreciate it. Thank you. Are you done, Mr. Blue?
I am done. It touched on all my questions, so.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
After that presentation, my question may seem kind of antiquated, but Darius, you touched on the fact that, you know, kids can come to the school the night before and plan a weapon. Mr. Martin, you talked about, you know, monies and us sometimes having knee-jerk reactions. Here's my question. Is it possible, Mr. Cole, that we can simply put as lagniappe to something like this, put alarms on exit doors at school? If someone opens that door, it's going to send off just this blaring alarm. Because what kids will do, they know the door is going to lock. They'll have their buddy standing guard, and when they come back to the door, they're going to open it and let them in. When I worked in schools, I personally had to warn children, and it takes time. It takes time because kids want to get to breakfast, they want to get to homeroom. So I think just as part of a deterrent, if we can look at some of these high-need schools and look at entry points, like there's a school real close to here that has 15 open entrance points. Am I correct? About that many? You know the school I'm talking about, okay? There's about 15 different entry points to that school. And again, Mike, to pivot back to what you said, these schools were built 35, 40, 50 years ago when they were constructed to be open and inviting, but, you know, so many conversations around education, and lots of times it's around academics, we talk about how the society that we live in has not kept pace with education. Well, sadly to say, weapons and things like this now are a part of our society that we haven't kept pace with. So we're going to have to do some big things and some little things to secure our school buildings. And I think alarms on doors would be a small cost, but a very effective cost. And when you fix it up with Alliance or Evolve, then I think we can take some giant steps as opposed to baby steps, Patrick. And I think you alluded to a lot of the little knee-jerk baby step reactions that we've taken the last 2 years. I see this as a giant step, a jump, because there's, correct me if I'm wrong, the big fight that took place at the alternative school a couple years ago, hadn't a weapon been placed there before? So someone knew that the fight was going to take place. They came to the campus the day before and hid the gun. So when the fight broke out, Mr. Shammer, you and I were having a conversation about the same thing when we got the phone call that the fight had taken place. And the gun had been hidden on campus the day before. So I agree with Mr. Martin. I'm fully in support of making this purchase. And with all the data, we always talk about data driving education, well, data can drive safety just as well. So let's take some giant steps in keeping our community and our kids safe.
Mr. Gilbert, step to the mic, please. I want to ask a follow-up question to Coach's comment. You want us to do all schools, Coach?
I would love to do all schools, but let's start with the 4 that we've targeted that are high risk.
How quickly
high
can you
need.
evaluate all 4 schools and get us a report back for how many alarms do we need at all those stores?
1 week, 7 days. I get it done.
All right.
Would it be 2 weeks if we did our high risk middle schools as well?
Mr. Gilbert?
Ask your question again.
You said 7 days for the 4 schools that
Yes.
we've identified.
Yes.
So let's look at some of our high risk middle schools.
Okay.
Another week?
So I'll tell you what, 4 high schools, 4 high-risk middle schools, and if you want to throw in a couple of elementary schools, 2 weeks. 2 weeks for a cumulative report out on, let's say, 10 schools.
Okay.
Okay?
But let's start with the 4.
I got it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Get it done, Mr. Gilbert. Get it done. Don't make me look bad.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Are you done? Okay, Ms. Sule?
Well, I was going to ask if Evolve and Alliance were here, so thank you. It was really, I had read what we had for you guys and was wanting to hear more. So I'm excited to see how it works. Thank y'all so much for your hard work. Superintendent Cole, the night that we interviewed you, one of the main things I remember you saying was safety, safety. You wanted to keep our kids safe. And I've heard you say it many times as I've had the privilege of hearing you speak. And it is such a encouragement tonight to see some practical steps of how we're going to make that happen. So thank you. Thanks for moving quickly on it.
Thank you, and I can't thank Captain Walker and Ms. Cheney enough. We meet weekly to talk about where we are in terms of our safety measures, and they have led the charge in being innovative, going out, getting the information, and a lot of that work began before we got here. But Captain Walker called me yesterday and said, hey, we need to think about additional measures. And so thank the 2 of them so much for their leadership and their hard work and dedication. I sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Russ?
Thank you. I'll be brief. To the gentleman with the vendor, thanks for the great demonstration about the technology. It looks great. I want to, point out in my experience so far this year with Mr. Cole that we've talked at length about security around our schools quite a number of times. And he has continued to work and iterate and evolve and understand the issues that we're facing, but they're complex because every school is different, a different size enrollment, different size building, different staff and levels of competency at every building. And so I understand it's a very tricky issue to resolve or to confront. But I think he's taken it seriously, and I'm glad to see something tangible that we can do as a board to help. And I would just ask that that you continue to inform the board of what you are doing to help address these issues in our community that are very important. And last thing I'll say, and I want to say this as respectfully as possible, but and preface that I've made this mistake as well in the past, but I want to encourage our board to be really, really careful when we talk about individual schools and the safety and security of those schools when we're in this public body. Because some of the things that have been said make me really, really nervous. And I've made that mistake before in public. But just remember that this is historically lives on the internet, these conversations, and as we're talking about proximity and location of schools and how many entrances and exits they have and how safe or not safe they are, that is information that can be used. So I would just encourage the board to talk broadly when we're talking about security if possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for the presentation. Look forward to our continued partnership. Thank you so much.
Are there any more comments from the board? Madam Secretary, can you call for a vote?
Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you. Item B3, partnership agreement, Third Future Schools. Consideration of a request for the approval of a professional services contract between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and Third Future Schools to operate a school. And there is one public comment. Ms. Matthews. Okay.
Third Future got a D last year. Yes, it's in transition, but it's still a D. Let's give them some more time to work on themselves because they're not ready for more responsibility. They need some self-help time. Thank you.
There's a public comment, online comment.
Yes, this is the online comment from Dr. Finney. IDEA has chosen to surrender its charter and should not be allowed to dictate the terms of that surrender. These students would be better served by the schools operated by EBR public school system employees in neighborhoods throughout the district. If you entered this agreement with Third Futures, it is important to be clear the exact identity of the contracting organization. What state are they domiciled in? Are they a nonprofit or for-profit? Is there a board that meets regularly and follows open meeting laws? It should be clear that the superintendent has proposed a one-year management agreement. These schools should not be considered charter schools during this year. Also, there should be no assumption that the services of Third Futures would be required after July 2026. Furthermore, the schools should receive a new site code and a new name that includes neither the word IDEA nor Third Futures. And that is the end of the public online comments.
Thank you, Mr. Gode. Are there any board comments? Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, and I just want to report out for the public, when IDEA surrendered their charter, there were a number of conversations being had in our community, and I was engaged in many of them with staff, with bus operators who work for IDEA, with husbands of bus operators at the men's private club. You all know what I'm talking about, the barbershop. And many of those conversations have centered around what are you all going to do and when are you all going to let us know. So I saw it prudent that we move expeditiously in terms of providing the families with an understanding of our expectation for the next year. What I like to do, if approved tonight, and I've talked to both parties that you all are going to vote on tonight, who we are going to engage and enter into a contract with about visiting with the families next week. So members from our team, members from Third Futures, and members from Ottoman will go to the school to answer any questions. And let me say for the record, any of the families who choose to return to EBR are welcome to do so. We welcome them returning and look forward to having them here. But also I have to take into consideration many of them have made a choice and have asked to continue to have that choice. And so it is extremely a fine line between doing what's best for our district as well as remembering to do what's best for our district is to do what's best for our families and our kids. And so to the comment that Third Future still needs some work, I do want to say they're turnaround specialists. I visited the schools, seen some of what they're doing, and recognized while the school was a D this year, it grew from a low F to a high D and have shown considerable growth. And so I went to the school, I know the principal. In fact, I trained the principal. He's doing a phenomenal job, has gone through a series of professional development from the company. And so I'm excited to enter into the partnership to give them the 1 year to show us how they can help those families, help those students. But in addition to helping the families and the students, we cannot be afraid to learn from other entities who are serving our kids in our community. So my recommendation is going to be to allow them to operate one of the schools, and I will hope that the board allows us to enter into a contract agreement to do that work.
Thank you, Soup.
Oh, in addition to that, I do want to say this. There are 5 charter operators who contacted me about the possibility of operating the schools for a year. In our conversations with all of them, 3 of them said had questions. One of them had questions. Two of them said it just wasn't the right time. Third Futures and Ottoman have been extremely aggressive from day one since the news broke that they wanted an opportunity to do this work and was willing to work with the district to do so. And after having conversations with them and the other charter operators, this is why I'm making a recommendation for these two entities this evening, and I would appreciate the support.
Thank you. Mr. Landis?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. First, I want to say thank you, Mr. Superintendent, because I can recall you called me personally, and we discussed this in detail about why we're making this move. I just want to personally thank you for explaining it to me. What I would, and you actually answered one of the questions that I was going to ask was, one of the things was about fairness. I know there's a lot of schools out there who also wanted to be in on the deal, which we've only seen 2 schools that came up, so I want to thank you for that too, and acknowledging that. The only thing I would say now is, are we offering any academic support to those schools? We do understand as a board that, looking at the performance scores that IDEA had over the course of the last 2 years, it wasn't in the prettiest light, and a lot of those schools, a lot of those students are going to be severely behind due to that. And I do understand that one of these schools, specialized in turnaround schools, I actually know the principal also. I've walked that campus too, does a phenomenal job. They have shown growth, but I want to know as a district, are we working with them hand in hand to ensure that those students that are remaining there, because they are part of our community, the students that are remaining at that school, are we offering them academic support and resources to ensure that those schools can be successful in getting those students caught back up?
Yes, sir. In my conversation with both entities, I've said to them, whatever we can do as a district to support your initiatives at the school, please let us know. We've talked about the funding that is going to have to transition in terms of following the kids around the title funding, high dosage tutoring, what that's going to look like, and working with our teams to make sure that we clear those paths and make it easier. As recently as today, I was at Prescott Academy, and I was saying to the school leader and the team there, whatever we can do, if you all are approved, we're willing to do it, and let's work together to meet the needs of our kids. And so to answer your direct question, yes, the system is there to provide. Talk to our staff to make sure we make available to these entities whatever they need, whatever resources they need in order to be effective. Ideally, we want all of our kids to get a good education no matter where they are. And as I've said time and time again, no matter what school they're in, whether it's one of our charters or not, all of the kids who are eligible to attend one of our schools is a student I see as one of our students. And so to answer your direct question, yes, sir.
Done. Mr. Gode?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chamberlain, this is going to be a lot directed at you because I just want to make sure that everyone understands. So this is not going to be a charter school.
That's correct.
So could you just briefly explain the difference between this school being a management operation versus a charter school?
Yeah, quite simply, the board is contracting with an entity to manage this school for 1 year. All of the requirements, laws, et cetera, associated with charter operators do not apply. And so we can do such things as enter a 1-year contract. We can name the terms that benefit both parties to the extent we need to, and we've done that. So these contracts are similar to any professional services contract you'd enter with any vendor to provide a service. And service here is the operation of the school.
And with that, what are the obligations, and maybe they're in the agreement, I don't remember seeing them, but what are the obligations to have board meetings, to have public records law, to have open meetings, to have...
Yeah, these are private vendors, and so they aren't obligated to hold a board meeting. This board is the oversight entity for these schools, as with any schools. And so this board would work with the managing partner as needed to provide records that might be needed, et cetera. So records generated by these entities are public records under the school board.
Right.
And if requested, we have to provide them.
So under this arrangement, there's no need for them to even have a board meeting as a private entity at all.
That's correct.
And there's no need for them to have an open meeting if they have a board meeting.
That's correct. This board.
I'm not saying pro or con. I'm just trying to make sure everyone understands what we're getting into. And then this is a 1-year agreement, and obviously within the contract, I think I did see we have access to all of their financial records.
That's correct.
Okay, so we will have. So I think if we enter this agreement, I think some kind of way we ought to make sure there's at least, since there's no open meetings, there's none of those sorts of things. we ought to have a consistently quarterly financial review or something like that to make sure that if we are to be providing the necessary oversight, that we have the ability to do that. I'm not trying to tie their hands or anything, but at the end of the day, from what I'm hearing from our council, we are the ones responsible, so we have to have the information to be able to assume that responsibility.
And my conversation thus far with both entities, they're open to doing whatever
Yes.
we need them to do. So I look forward to a working relationship.
And in no way I was trying to imply that they weren't. I just
No, I got you.
I just want the public to understand that this is a different animal than a charter school. And so we're going to have to handle it differently. And we just need the ability to provide the oversight that we need. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Lewis?
Okay, thank you. For the sake of those who are listening, Superintendent Cole, possibly from home, my question with Third Futures, is this going to be a location change from the Prescott site or an additional site? And then also, could you speak to the employees or how will there be EBR employees that will, be considered as the employees for this particular school, or what exactly does that look like?
First, this will be an additional site. Second, there are employees who are already there who don't work for the district. I think what we want to do is give them an opportunity based on the conversations I've had thus far to talk to and talk about the need. I think the second thing, we're going to ask these entities to hire their own employees. I'll just be very honest with you. In the event they are not able to hire their own employees, we can then discuss what a partnership agreement in terms of deploying teachers and staff from the school system to work in those schools. But I want to be clear, we still have classrooms at our schools, but we need good teachers. And so, not to say that I don't care about the kids, but my priority is going to be to make sure the schools we direct run have high quality teachers in the classroom, and then we'll have conversations. But right now, they're being asked to hire their own employees and their own staff.
Mr. Lanus?
I move that we approve the superintendent's recommendation.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Russ?
Yeah, just a couple comments. Wanted to point out that this operator at Prescott, while I think their letter grade was a D, they received an A in progress, which tells me that they know how to grow students. Taking a low letter grade school and delivering an A in progress in a year is pretty impressive. I also know that part of their model of how they turn around schools has to do with how they recruit and retain staff. And so I would encourage that, we allow them to do that. Because part of how they compensate and contract with those teachers and recruit really high quality teachers is part of how they do that work. But I do approve this contract. I think it's a great opportunity to allow someone to help grow our students until we figure out long term what needs to happen with this particular school. So thank you.
Any other board comments? Madam Secretary, can we call for a vote?
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you, ma'am. B4, partnership agreement, French and Montessori Education Incorporated, DBA, Ottoman Schools. Consideration of a request for the approval of a professional services contract between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and French and Montessori Education Incorporated, DBA, Ottoman Schools, to operate a school. Any public comment? Ms. Matthews? Oh. Any board comments? Okay, hold on. There's an online comment. That's old, that's old.
This is from Dr. Finney. IDA has chosen, it's many of the same words. IDA has chosen to surrender its charter and should not be allowed to dictate the terms of that surrender. These students would be better served by the schools operated by East Baton Rouge Parish Public School System employees in neighborhoods throughout the district. Does the organization intend to ever hold its board meetings in Baton Rouge or recruit Baton Rouge residents to serve on the board? Or will it be just like Collegiate and Discovery run by New Orleans residents for the alleged benefit of Baton Rouge? It should also be clear that the superintendent has proposed a one-year agreement. If this school operated on the Bridge campus in 2025-2026, it should be clearly understood that it is not a charter school. There should also be no assumption that the services of the Ottoman organization would be required after July 2026. Furthermore, the school should receive a new site code and a new name that includes neither the word IDEA nor Ottoman. That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Mr. Ballou?
Yeah, just real quick. Is the intent for this to be run under a Montessori model? Or,
To be perfectly honest, that a question I can't answer.
Oh, okay.
We do have some representatives who are on Zoom and able to participate. If you like to answer that question, if they'd like to take a shot at answering that question.
Sure. I didn't mean for it to be long. Just,
okay.
More of a yes or no, but if they're available.
April, we know how to get to them. There they are. Welcome to East Baton Rouge Parish School Board meeting.
Thank you very much. Superintendent Cole, President Stewart, and EBR Board, we really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you this evening. I'm here with my Chief Academic Officer, Adrian Colopy, and Kenya Hill, who will assume the role of Executive Director of Baton Rouge if this is approved. The model currently is not to include Montessori or French. We have a school that was founded in 1981 that uses those models, but the model for this school would include rigorous academic instruction, comprehensive arts, and gifted and talented programming, including a high level of support for English language learners and intervention models that will continue to help our students grow.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Lewis?
So with the current IDA school in the South, are they practicing gifted and talented? Do they have a gifted and talented?
I don't know if the current IDA has a gifted and talented population.
They don't?
They do not, okay.
Okay. So we're going to bring a non-charter school in, and they're going to address gifted and talented with kids out of school that have not taken part or hadn't been labeled as gifted and talented?
Well, I want to say two things, Coach. One, it doesn't mean that there aren't students there who've been identified as gifted and talented. I just don't know if they met the requirement of having a gifted and talented program based on the numbers. There may be some students there who've been identified as gifted and talented, but they may not have the numbers to have a gifted and talented program in the school. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So there may be some who are identified there. In fact, I believe there are gifted and talented students in all of our schools.
In all of our schools.
Yeah,
right.
But there is a minimum requirement of student population to have the actual program in the school, which goes to the student-teacher ratio and things of that nature. So.
Okay, got to think. No, thank you. I got to think about this one a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gode?
Yes, thank you. I haven't had much chance to look into Ottoman. Can we still get them on the Zoom? Yes, thank you so much for being with us. Could you just enlighten us just a little bit about, for instance, I know you have, I think, 4 schools in the New Orleans area now. At those schools, what are the characteristics of the students that you currently teach, particularly in both racial makeup, Black, Hispanic, and so on, and also economically disadvantaged? Can you give us some insight in your experiences?
Of course. So we operate 2 schools, 2 K through 8 schools. We serve approximately 1,450 students. One of our schools, Ottoman Uptown, is an A-rated school. That population serves 35% Black students, 37% economically disadvantaged, 18% special education. However, our second school, Ottoman Gentili, which was opened in 2018, this is the school that has seen some of the highest growth in the entire state over the last 2 years. Their population is 79% Black, 70% economically disadvantaged, 25% students with IEPs. Last year in the state, Ottoman Gentili was in the 99th percentile in growth for students with special education status. They were in the 95th percentile in the state for growth of students who were economically disadvantaged, and we're in the 93rd percentile in the state for growth for Black students. So we firmly believe that we have populations that are similar, especially with our Ottoman Gentili school, and that is the school in which we are replicating this model into Baton Rouge.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear that, and congratulations on the success that you've had in Gentili and working through this. One other question that I forgot to ask earlier, Mr. Shamlin, that some of the members of the public have asked. This is a contract management agreement, but the process to apply to become a charter school, if they chose to become a charter school after this first year, there is still an open window so that that process could proceed as normal. There would be no any special needs or anything to be done to do that.
That's correct, yes.
So it would come up just as a regular run-of-the-mill
Yes.
charter application?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just wanted everyone to be clear on that, to understand how that worked. Thank you. That's all my questions, and thank you, Audubon, for your help and time in signing in.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes, thank you. My question is similar to what Mr. Gode asked with item 3, and I just want to ask for item 4, will the governance process be the same as far as there being no other board or what have you that will guide this particular school for the year? They will still be pretty much will be responsible for this school to the extent that Mr. Gode has mentioned even with item 3.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Martin?
Thank you. And I apologize if I missed the answer to this, and I'm sure it's already been stated, but Superintendent, could you just remind me which organization is taking which school?
Audubon is going to Innovation, and Third Futures is going to Bridge.
Okay, good. I was hoping and expecting, based on their statement, that they were going to focus on English language learners, because there's a significant population
Absolutely.
of English language learners in that part of town, so that meets a real need that we have down there.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Ms. Sule? Oh, okay, she passed.
Move.
Second.
Accept the superintendent's recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Landis, and we have a second by Mr. Gode. Any other comments by the board? Madam President, can you call for a vote? I'm secretary.
Please vote. The motion carries.
I thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to acknowledge our visitor from Texas, who is here with us from Third Futures, who I spent some time with today, and just wanted to give her an opportunity to say hello.
Didn't have an opportunity to address or answer any questions, but happy to do so now if you have any that you would like to ask.
I don't have any questions. I will say I think I've had the opportunity to meet you on the campus before with Principal Wisham, and I just want to thank you all again for the great work you are doing at Prescott.
Thank you. Thank you. We're happy to have any of you anytime, so come on over.
Thank you so kindly. Okay, item C, next meeting, of course, dates and appointments. Committee of the Whole to be held on February 6, 2025 at 5 p.m. in the Central Office Boardroom. Regular meeting to be held on February 20th at 5 p.m. in the Central Office. Mr. Gode.
I move we adjourn.